All about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Is the Saturday 5. I'm Ben Leo, along with James Price, Dr. Renee Honderkamp, Paula London and Benjamin Butterworth. Tonight on the show.
Don't let climate protesters blackmail the arts.
We should all stand up and applaud the total block on puberty blockers.
Can we trust the bombshell polls that put Labour at nearly 500 seats?
Brits abroad get a bad rap. Is it time to cut them slack?
And we shouldn't let that old convict Donald Trump for the White House.
It's 6 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5 with me, Ben Leo, this evening. I know it's normally Darren Grimes in this presenter's chair, but he got so worried about the migrant crisis, he's gone to the English Channel himself to protect our borders. Here he is, Captain Grimes, preparing to take to the high seas. Have we got a picture? There we are. I told him earlier, Darren, Eurovision was a couple of weeks back, mate, so, yeah, have fun with that. No Albie Amincona either. He swapped his GB News seat tonight for the one he always wanted, and we always knew, as a Tory MP. I actually spoke to the Lib Dems earlier tonight, but they told me Albie was even too wet for even them. And speaking of wet, Benjamin Butterworth is here too. He's about the only Labour type about, well, not about to enter, rather, Parliament, judging by the latest polls, and we'll get stuck into that very shortly. We're also joined by political commentator and former Nadeem Zahawi advisor James Price, plus the wonderful GP and medical writer Dr. Renee Honderkamp, and the lovely broadcaster and media commentator Paula London. Now, you know the drill. We each take turns to present our views on a topic, and then everyone else piles in. And of course, we want to know your views as well. Send them to gbnews.com/your say, and we'll read them out as soon as we can. But before we start tearing each other apart, here's your Saturday night news with Sam Francis.
Ben, thank you very much and good evening to you. It's just after 6 o'clock. A look at the news tonight, and we start with election news. The battle lines are being drawn in the fight for votes, with both the Conservatives and Labour attacking each other's economic records today. The Prime Minister says his opponents will run out of money, while Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the country's crying out for change. Speaking to a crowd in front of the Conservative campaign bus earlier, Rishi Sunak pledged to give millions of pounds to towns across the country if he's re-elected, adding another 30 to the 70 previously announced.
100 towns across our country, they're going to receive £20 million each. And crucially, it will be local people in all those areas are in charge of how to spend that money to make sure it's spent and invested on their priorities. An example of us levelling up everywhere, backing local people and their priorities and giving them the long-term funding assurance to do so. The methodology that selects these towns is something that's been used multiple times before. It's all public. It's based on areas levelling up needs, looking at economic opportunities, skills, health and life expectancy. So it's an objective set of criteria, all published online. But I'm not going to make any apology for supporting towns.
Well, launching his battle bus, Sir Keir Starmer described the Conservatives' levelling up pledge as a phony gimmick. The Labour leader says his party's data reveals which areas will be hit if the Conservatives get back into government, with figures showing people in the north east of England will be £5,400 worse off, and families in the south west will be £4,300 poorer.
You want change, the power's with you because the vote is with you. You have to vote for change. We have changed this Labour Party and put it back in the service of working people. What we're asking now, humbly asking, is the opportunity to change our country and put it back in the service of working people. And that requires both setting out our ambition to change the country, but also the first steps, the down payment, if you like, stabilising the economy, making sure we can deal with our waiting list, getting back people back into work, setting up Great British Energy to keep bills down. They are the first steps to the change this country desperately needs.
And in Wales, the leader of Plaid Cymru, Rhun ap Iorwerth, is accusing Labour of taking Welsh votes for granted.
We have, Labour launching a campaign in Wales and barely talking about anything relevant to Wales other than that they'd get to grips with health and education that they've been running for 25 years anyway, sort of gaslighting the people of Wales. What are people hearing for their communities from the main UK parties? Nothing. So Plaid Cymru's voice on that's coming through loud and clear.
Well, turning from election news to London, where there has been a heavy presence in the centre of the city for several protest events. Thousands of people turned out for a rally organised by Tommy Robinson in Parliament Square this afternoon, as Stand Up to Racism staged a counter-protest nearby. And in a separate demonstration, 9 Youth Demand activists were arrested for trying to block traffic. That group is calling for an end to military action in Gaza. These are live pictures coming to us from the scene in Wembley, where the Metropolitan Police are saying streets there are even busier ahead of tonight's Champions League final, but that it does have a robust operation in place, they say, in case of any further disruption. Rishi Sunak has praised a proposed ceasefire deal set out by President Joe Biden, calling it welcome news. He's calling on Hamas to accept the new deal to end the conflict in Gaza. The proposal would end the fighting there and return hostages, beginning with a 6-week ceasefire. However, Israel's government says certain conditions still need to be met by Hamas. Ticketmaster has confirmed a data breach, with hackers claiming to have access to the details of up to 560 million customers. The Shiny Hunters Group is reportedly demanding £400,000 in ransom to prevent names, addresses and some payment details being sold on the dark web. Ticketmaster's parent company, Live Nation, says it's now launched an investigation and is working with authorities across the world. And finally, King Charles has personally given a card to a D-Day veteran today who's celebrating his 100th birthday. Jim Miller was invited to Buckingham Palace, where he spoke to the King about his experiences during the Second World War. Mr. Miller landed on the beaches of Normandy in June 1944 and took part in the Allied military operation. He said he was totally surprised and delighted to have been invited to the palace. That's the latest from me for now. Another update in the next hour or so. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Right, I'm going to kick us off tonight, and it's with the bombshell polling commissioned by GB News that shows a Tory wipeout could be on the horizon at the general election. And I know this has left a lot of viewers miffed. You've all day been banging on about why are you giving Labour such a boost. But look, this polling shows that the Conservatives could be reduced to just 72 seats. But with tactical voting considered, that could drop to a very lowly 66. So Labour is also predicted to win a huge landslide alongside that with 493 seats. The polling suggests the Conservatives would return only around 7 more MPs than the Liberal Democrats. But my point tonight is, regardless of the polling, when are the polls ever right? We saw it with Donald Trump in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was at one point tipped to be a 99% certainty to win the presidency. We saw it with Brexit the same year. We saw it with Theresa May in 2017 and later in 2019. The polls are always wrong. And that's the same message I'm hearing from the Tory campaign trail too, which is why they've pledged to keep on fighting regardless. So, Benjamin Butterworth, we can't trust the polls, can we?
I mean, look, that's just a lazy argument. You know, the polls are not always wrong. There's a degree of inaccuracy in all polling, but generally they are very accurate. And actually, all the examples you give are really quite different to the situation that we're seeing now. The polling has not moved...
Or even Clinton and Trump in 16?
The polling has not moved an inch in this scenario since Liz Truss was the Prime Minister. The Labour lead has been much the same. It's increased ever so slightly in the last 6 months, but the Labour lead has been about 20 points since then. And if you look at all the other factors, like who they most trust to be Prime Minister, who they trust on the economy, who they trust on security, most of the time Labour wins on those too. So if you break down the figures, it also echoes the top line. What I think is the problem for the Tories, you mentioned there in your comments that they are carrying on regardless. Well, that's what they've been doing since Liz Truss was in office. And I think the problem is they've been trying the same tactics, and lo and behold, they're getting the same lack of results. And they're going to have one hell of a hangover on the 5th of July.
OK, James, you were Nadeem Zahawi's former advisor, is that right?
That's right.
Do you speak to him much these days? What's his thoughts on the current Conservative turmoil?
I can't get rid of him, no matter how hard I try. It's obviously a bombshell poll, as you say. I think is the right wording for it. And obviously, with his old experience running YouGov, you can see the ups and downs of how these polls all play out.
Sorry to interrupt. Just remind us why he's not standing this time. What's happened?
I think it's in his words that the heart said carry on going and the head said to stop.
So he stepped down?
He's standing down. I think a lot of MPs that have come in since 2010, as he did, and many, many others as well, the last 14 years have really felt like the last 30 years or so. When I first started working in Westminster around then, I was a young girl with a dream. Viewers can see what it's done to me. This is part of the problem, some of the churn. So I don't really blame people standing down anyway. I don't think it's just about the dire predictions coming through.
So look at this polling here. There's a graphic on the screen. If there's radio listeners tuning in, Labour predicted to have 493 seats. The Conservatives, 72 seats, followed by the Lib Dems on 39, the SNP 22, Plaid Cymru 4, and the Greens with 2.
And you see who's not on there is Reform, not getting a single seat in this poll at all, but will be costing the Conservatives an awful lot. And so actually they're proving the Tories right, that every vote that goes for Reform is going to be another vote for Keir Starmer.
Good point about Reform. Dr Renee, I heard you spoke to some Reform types today. What's their thoughts on the current situation?
I did speak to some today, and their feeling is that it will be a hung parliament, that will not come true. And they really do believe that. And actually, I have to say...
Well, they also believed in Brexit, so it's no surprise they've got no common sense.
So did I. And I have to say that I actually think you're right, and I don't think polls historically for about the last decade to 15 years have ever been right, and I think there's a reason for that. I think we've turned into such a divisive country where when you say something that isn't the lefty, wokey narrative that everybody wants you to believe, look at Benjamin, you get shouted at and you get told to be quiet, or you get told that you're an idiot, or you're stupid, or you're deplorable. So what you do is you just shut up, and then when you get to the ballot box, behind that curtain, you can do whatever you want. No one can shout at you.
Actually, Benjamin, Renee's got a point there, because you proved her point in essence by saying Brexit voters had no common sense. You're just a nasty leftist, aren't you?
I'm not that left-wing. But, no, I actually think the reverse will happen this time. First of all, the way that the Tories have gone on about so-called woke endlessly, it is not something that Middle England is worried about. I'm not suggesting that they come to... I'm not suggesting that they all come to the same conclusions I do. I don't think they do. But they have much more important things to think about. And the idea that somehow a woke cabal of people like me in the media have somehow shut Nigel Farage up, well, I don't think any evidence supports that. The man never stops talking and never achieves anything either.
I actually wrote about Trump when it happened and said the reason that we got Trump and Brexit is because if you said you were going to vote for Trump, you were shouted down, you were told you were stupid, you were a fascist, xenophobic, all of those things. So in the end, you stop saying it because you don't want to be called names.
Silent voters.
Nobody wants to be called names.
But that's happening in the reverse now, because I'm endlessly, ploughed with insults, woke used as an insult and words like it, for saying that I don't want someone like Reform anywhere near power.
Paula,
I think we have the reverse.
I think Reform are a great party, but they're not ready at the moment. And what was very interesting to me, Ben Habib, I think, is fantastic. And when the by-election, when he lost, and he even said that if he was an MP, he wouldn't take a salary. When he lost, that made me realise that they have no chance of getting any seats because he's one of the best they've got, obviously, him and Richard Tice. And he's very well known. He was in the press all the time. He was on TV all the time. And if he can't win, no one. Because most of the other PPCs that are known, they're nowhere near as good.
Just to give some balance to that, they'd argue that the local elections are different from the general election.
Yeah, of course, more people vote in the general election, but even so, for him not to be able to win, when he did so much campaigning, he was always in the press, he was fantastic, he won't take a salary. They're not going to get any seats.
But has Nigel Farage just proved why we need proportional representation rather than this first past the post?
No, we don't need that at the
4 million votes, not one seat. How can that be?
Yeah, UKIP in 2015, more than 4 million votes. More than 4 million votes, no seats.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
I don't think PR is good. I mean, it's very, very hard to form governments. We've seen so many problems around the world.
James, isn't PR the most common form of democracy across Europe? Isn't it us and some other Scandinavian country that only does first first past the post.
You look at the mess that you get in all these European parliaments.
Yeah.
The problem is that if you end up needing coalitions, then all the deals are done behind closed doors, sadly in their smokeless rooms, but behind closed doors where people can't actually see what it is that's being traded off. We saw a little bit of that in the coalition agreement, where, what was it behind closed doors? No, I think that the first past the post is the best system, even if it means a small Labour majority, so that will stop them messing around the voting
What if it means a huge Labour majority?
I'm really worried.
Certainly, if that's the case, I don't think a democratic result can be called bad for democracy. But until you say it then, nobody's been talking about Labour in any of this.
Okay.
I've been spending most of the week knocking on doors, and there's no enthusiasm for Starmer at all. So that number may be high, but it's very soft.
Last point.
But you know what? Thatcher and Blair both came in with very soft, vague manifestos at their first elections and then got into their stride. That's how people take power. They let the others lose it. But I think this election isn't about policies, it's about punishment. So the fact that Labour says not much is an intentional strategy, because they know they absolutely hate you guys, and that's all that matters.
All right,
to get across the
we'll
line.
find out in the next 5 to 6 weeks. My point is that the polls, I can't remember a poll ever being right. Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. Who's up next?
It's going to be me, and I intend to be woke and annoying, as Dr. Renee suggested. Look, Darren Grimes can't be with us tonight, but we're still going to talk about another orange-tanned man. That's the former US president, the 45th Donald Trump. Now, he was convicted of 34 felonies earlier this week. I'm sure you can't help but have noticed it. And the America First president has an American first. He is the first US president to be a convict, criminal Trump. Now we have a situation where I think America is on the edge of giving up the democratic freedoms that it used to be the beacon of. And I think that Donald Trump should not be allowed to run for US president, because I don't want a criminal in the White House. Ben, I know you're obsessed with him. There's nothing stopping...
But by the way, when you were talking about the orange tan man, I thought you were talking about me. I've just seen myself on the monitor. I look so tan that I'm a bit dirty.
Gorgeous.
Well, at least you're self-aware.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Better points. So the US Constitution says that you have to be 35 years old and born in America to run for president. There's no other rule, right? You could have a situation, though. He can be in prison and run for the White House. You could have a situation where, because he's in prison, he can't vote for himself, but he could still be elected president. Do you not think this is farcical?
Benjamin, let me ask you a question.
You won't be going to jail.
Do you not think that... do you not think it's farcical? The fact that you've got a politicised justice system in the United States, a Democrat district attorney, Alvin Bragg, who before the case even started was boasting about how he's going to nail Donald Trump. You've got a politicised judge whose daughter has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Democratic campaign trail. Yeah. It's a complete stitch-up, as Trump has said, as any normal-thinking person has said. Do you not... You bang on about democracy and protecting the integrity of elections. Do you not think that persecuting political rivals with lawfare is absurd? That's the most absurd thing about it. Not the fact that Donald Trump paid a stripper to keep quiet about their liaison.
It's not against the law to pay hush money either. Like Bill Clinton's done it.
It is in the way that he did it. So the reason he got these convictions, 12 jurors found against him in all 34 claims, is because he paid something like, I think it's $130,000 or $150,000 to a sex worker, an adult performer who he'd had sex with on one occasion, and then he didn't declare that in his accounts. So it's not actually the infidelity,
what a crime,
the immorality.
Yeah, but I believe it was paid to the lawyer.
The problem is that he lied on his accounting to be the president. You dispute that, do you?
The lawyer's a convicted felon as well.
Do you dispute that he lied?
No, I don't care. I couldn't care. I and many other people, half of America, couldn't care less if you paid a stripper to be quiet after sleeping with her. People don't care. People care about their quality of life, whether their children are getting a good education, whether they can get housing, whether they can feel safe wandering the streets of America. They don't care about some trivial stuff about Stormy Daniels. What they also care about is the weaponisation of the justice system in America. It's a complete fad and fakery to think that America now has some sort of honest, morally superior justice system and democratic process in America, when you see what's happened to Donald Trump. If Donald Trump wasn't running for president, would he be subject to this case? No. The judge even said to the jury, I don't know what the crime is, but even if you don't agree on the crime, just find it. You don't have to find it unanimously. Just find him guilty.
There are 4 more
it's
cases
a sham.
to come that will likely come after the November
I can't believe
election.
you're being so disingenuous to not realise it's a sham. If it was someone on the left, I'd say the same thing. If Jeremy Corbyn
should be in high office, I don't think Jeremy Corbyn should be in high office.
Let's bring in.
But can I just say, you know, a former Democrat politician, a lady called Madeleine Albright, she said there's a special place in hell for women that don't stand with other women. You love Trump. Is there a special place in hell for you?
Well, I'm very religious and I will be going to heaven. Don't worry about that. I pray to God today. I pray every day. And also, you have to remember there's a difference between a civil case and a criminal case. So you're forgetting that. Civil cases are often brought for monetary gain as well, you know. And this case was brought, the first case, about 20 years ago that happened, when he paid off the other lady as well. So if it was a criminal case, it would be very different. Civil is different. Women make up things to get money. I'm sorry, that does happen a lot of the time.
So you think she made it up?
No, I said women do. No, not Stormy Daniels. There was another lady. There were 2 ladies. You know, there's not just
the
one
author,
lady.
Jean Carroll. Renee, what do you think as a woman on Donald Trump?
So, look, Donald Trump as a man is not my cup of tea, and I think he has done and said some things which are absolutely hideous for women. However, what I'm looking at is the state that the world is in, the state that America is in, and everything that he says applies to this country as well, in terms of immigration, standard of living, you know, keeping things at home, being self-sufficient with energy. So I look at Trump and think, if he can actually stand up and make America great again, we need somebody here who can stand up and make the UK great again. So I think actually he's a good thing for the world. If the choice is Biden and Trump.
James?
Well, I think it's remarkable that he was at least found mentally competent to stand trial, because Joe Biden was found that he was not seen mentally fit to stand in a trial in this sense, and the guy is clearly not very well either, and that the Democrats have been deliberately trying to stoke this up. They said this, Trump was dead and gone in the water until this sort of stuff started happening. His campaign made $50-something million in small donations in the first 24 hours afterwards.
The website crashed.
And the Democratic Party have been pushing this stuff because they think Trump is more beatable in the general election than many of the other candidates. Somebody like Ron DeSantis, who is actually a much more competent governor. And again, if you were talking about defending women, the Democratic Party are the people, again, who are pushing things like puberty blockers and all these kinds of horrible things that have been soft on crime, and women are much bigger victims of crime than men. And so, you know, I think that we should be very careful about who we say is a better protector of these things.
I think that's nonsense. But did you ever meet Donald?
Hang on a minute. You can't just respond to his argument by saying it's nonsense, then moving on. Answer the point.
Because the biggest attack on women's rights in the US has been taking away their right to an abortion across the US.
That's a different
massive rolling back of their rights, and that is an attack that was done by Republicans, and...
Well, do you agree with full-term abortion at 9 months?
That's not what the question was. The question was that they have a right...
That's what some Democrats want.
That wasn't the change that's happened, and it's one thing that's pushed women towards the Democrats. But can I ask, you've been in government. Did you ever meet Donald Trump? Did you know how government felt about him in the UK?
I've not met Trump yet, but the British embassy in the States has been fairly partisan towards the Democratic Party for a long time. So we did a trip out there, and they were very, very hesitant about us seeing conservative right-wing think tanks and things like that. We did go to the White House and we did a meeting with the current Vice President, Kamala Harris. So we met her, we met Janet Yellen and some people like that. And it's reassuring that, much like in Britain, America is not necessarily getting the very best of its citizenry as politicians.
We've run out of time. Last point.
Do you think we'll struggle to bond with Trump if he gets back in power as a country?
I think that we need to make the special relationship stronger again, and not just about politicians. My other half is American. There's a special relationship there. It transcends politics.
Yeah. OK, good stuff. We'll find out again in November whether that trial has any effect on their election over there. Still to come tonight, should private puberty blocker clinics be banned from dishing out the drugs to kids? And what do arts events who are forced to close by deranged climate activists think, well, how should they handle all the wokery and the wackery, as Darren Grimes would say, when they try to force their events to be closed? Do we need to protect our art spaces? But next, a boozy British tourist ruining holiday hotspots around the world. Magaluf, eat your heart out. With the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thanks for your emails about tonight's topics. Alban, I think that's how you pronounce it, Alban, good evening to you. You say, if after July the 4th all polls turn out to be wrong, I expect Benjamin Butterworth to appear on GB News wearing pants on his head for 3 months. Fancy that?
Deal.
Deal. There we go. You heard it here first. Social media, clip this up, put it out on Twitter, make it go viral, make him stick to it. Archie said PR is a rubbish system. Multi-parties trying to agree on something that their polls are part in is just a non-starter. I don't even like a coalition government. And now it's time for our next debate. Who's up next?
I'm up next. Brits abroad get a bad rap, but I just think it's time to cut them some slack. Brits like to have a laugh, they like to have a drink, they're big spenders. And there are some Brits that misbehave on holiday. They have a few too many drinks, but they're the small minority and they're just being defamed, basically. The whole of Europe seems to hate Brits travelling to their countries, but America loves them. So I think more Brits should go to America.
So, Paula, this came from a couple of stories doing the rounds, separate ones, but all kind of fall into the same package. The first being that after maybe a year or so of the Canary and the Balearic Islands, Mallorca and so on, complaining about rowdy British tourists, they're now moaning, laughably, that tourism is down and the Brits aren't turning up. Somewhere else, I think it was maybe Menorca, had banned, maybe rightly or wrongly, Benjamin could answer this in a second, they'd banned penis-shaped inflatables in the water because Brits love them too much. You think they get a bad rap?
Yeah, I think Brits like to have a laugh. I mean, the last holiday I went was Dubai, and I had a wonderful time, and quite a lot of Brits go there. And I remember sunbathing by the pool, and then I saw a whole load of guys doing press-ups and then down in a pint of beer, and I thought, oh, I bet they're Brits. But they were just having a laugh, and they're fun. You know, other people are just reading, being boring. But Brits, they do pranks, they're having a laugh, and they're very chatty and friendly. I'm a Brit, obviously.
The problem is, though, when they've had 10 of those pints, they become really obnoxious.
Well, not really device, they get arrested,
they
so they behave better there. Maybe they need to be stricter
vomit in the street.
They don't. I've never seen people vomit in the street. I spent a lot of time in Spain, and the people that I have seen misbehaving are the Moroccans. I've seen them commit crimes, actually, and I had to tell the police. So the Moroccans are very bad.
I'm sure some Brits have committed crimes.
Yes, but I've actually seen Moroccans like rob people, offer illegal things to people. Moroccans, they cause a lot of problems, but we don't hear about it here.
Well, look, this is interesting because I don't think I personally have ever seen any other nationalities behave in the way some British cohorts do abroad, especially when they're 10 pints down. Benjamin, what do you make of the Menorca ban on penis-shaped inflatables in the sea?
I mean, do you know, I kind of hate stuff like that. I find it a bit grim, and also, given it's a family destination, I think it'd just be a bit awkward if you're there with little kids or something to try and explain what's going on. But do you know what? I mean, look, I like dangerous travel. I go to countries where ISIS are the problem, not British tourists.
Yeah.
So these aren't situations that I tend to come across. Although I have been to Benidorm 3 times. I'll confess, all 3 occasions were as a journalist being sent there to write about it.
Did you bring a donkey home?
No, I didn't. But tell you what, when I did go there the first time, you know, Madge on the TV show Benidorm, she would go around on her scooter. The mayor of Benidorm had to ban renting scooters to British tourists because they were all getting on them like Madge from the TV show and having a cigarette and getting drunk going down the beachfront.
Do you look down on people who go to Benidorm?
Well, this is the thing. This is where I think the problem is, right? In that lots of people that look as nice as James does, for example, that might go to a nice restaurant and have, you know, a couple of bottles of red wine each. That's a lot of alcohol. That's a fabulous day out. No problem with it in principle. But even if they're rowdy on the way home, they don't get judged in this way. You know, middle-class, upper-middle-class Britons aren't looked at like this. But you sit around the pool and you drink beer all day with your top off and a tattoo, and people start making judgments. And I do think there's a snobbery in it.
Yeah, but they do, those guys were doing, like, push-ups and stuff. Like, if you get drunk, I'm sure
You're
you don't
obsessed with push-ups, Paula.
No, but I'm saying...
Go on, on the floor,
no, but
push-ups.
I'm saying, but, like, guys do pranks. Like, I've seen British guys and they dare each other to do things, or they just do weird stuff. Other people that are... You know, I don't know.
I think this is really interesting.
They don't do things like that. They just stagger home.
So I spend a lot of time in the south of Spain, and I see some of these people behaving in the towns, and some of it is really tacky and nasty, and you don't want it to happen. However, I also think the Spanish are being a little bit silly, and I think they're looking to bite the hand that feeds them, because without that tourism, they will be nowhere. It is their major source of GDP in all of these countries. So I'm afraid they're just going to have to...
James, dare I ask if you've ever staggered down the West End in Ibiza, urinating in doorways and singing English football songs?
If any viewers can find the inflatable penis that I lost in New York, please send it into the GB News studios. I do think it's a little awkward and a little embarrassing when you think the way that Americans think about Brits in their head, right? They think we're all kind of James Bond. They think we're this kind of classy thing from Downton Abbey or whatever else. And then, you know, a smash cut to guys in Ibiza getting absolutely hammered. And that is embarrassing. I'd like for us to up our game a little bit.
And it does feel like we're worse than any other nationality. You know, maybe we're just self-aware and we're quite self-deprecating as a culture, but...
We have a pub culture here as well.
The extent of drinking that people go to, you know, especially as someone who's now in my 30s, yes, I don't look it, but I am, I don't want to get, like, really hammered. It doesn't seem fun. It seems quite stressful. And so I kind of think, is it not a shame that that's the only way that we as Brits express ourselves?
Well, I did a season in Ibiza when I was 18.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if any viewers at home have seen Kevin and Perry Go Large, the film about the two lads. Well, the one lad goes to Ibiza to be a superstar DJ. I basically did that. I copied that.
How did it go?
I did a few small gigs here and there, but I never quite made it to Amnesia or, you know, Radio 1, no.
But you had a lot of fun, though.
Is Amnesia a club? I forget.
It's a club, yeah.
Very good.
Very good.
But there we go. I think we should you know, be proud of our British culture.
I like to see youngsters have fun. They're young people having a laugh after university. Good on them.
You're a proper lad, right?
Really?
Do you not, or you were? Do the mates that you went to school with and things from back home, would they go and drink a lot in Ibiza or something?
Not now, but I have a story. Back in the day, the first ever time we went to Ibiza, I'll be very quick, we're running out of time.
Oh,
we were 17. A couple of our group after a night out, not me, a couple had a wee in the street. The civil guard came over, slapped them over the face, made them mop up their behaviour with their tops, and gave us, or all of us actually, even though it wasn't me who did it, a battering with a truncheon. Do you know what? None of us ever did anything like that ever again. So that's something maybe to consider.
I had a similar experience, but I had to pay for it.
What, in a fine? Right, got it. OK, right. Swiftly moving on. Still ahead, the government has banned puberty blockers for kids on the NHS, but should they still be able to get them privately from private clinics? A new ban comes in on that on Monday. Is it the right decision? But next, should arts organisations end sponsorship deals because of concerns over climate protesters like this? You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News. Stick with us.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We hold on to a lot of fine weather across the UK over the next day or so, but as we go into the new working week, things will turn a bit cooler and more unsettled from the north. High pressure is dominating at the moment, the high located just to the west of the UK, but it's keeping things pretty quiet weather-wise. And certainly as we head into the evening, we hold on to a lot of fine, dry weather. Cloud tending to melt away across England and Wales, so plenty of clear weather as we go into the early hours of Sunday. We'll see one or two mist or fog patches forming by Sunday morning and notice some rain just pushing into the far northwest of the UK by the early hours of Sunday too. Towns and city temperatures hold up quite well, generally near double figures, but in some rural spots we could dip down to 2 or 3 Celsius, so we could see a touch of frost in one or two very rural spots by Sunday morning. So Sunday gets off to a pretty fine start across the east and southeast of Scotland, lots of sunshine around, but notice out towards the west and northwest, thicker cloud bringing some outbreaks of rain. And that cloud of rain will also work its way in across parts of Northern Ireland, so some patchy rain here as we start Sunday. But for England and Wales, it's set fair, plenty of sunshine around, pretty much unbroken sunshine in places, just a legacy of some low cloud to clear from the far southeast first thing in the morning. During the rest of the day on Sunday, those outbreaks of rain in the northwest will gradually start to migrate further south and east across other parts of Scotland, across Northern Ireland, eventually reaching the far northwest of England by the very end of the day. East of Scotland and down towards the southeast, and too for much of England and Wales. Lots of sunshine here, and again feeling quite warm in that sunshine, particularly towards the southeast of England. Highs here are 23, possibly even 24 Celsius. That's into the mid-70s in Fahrenheit. Always a bit cooler though towards the northwest given that cloud and rain. The band of cloud and rain edges further south into England and Wales as we go into Monday. To the south of that, brighter skies, 1 or 2 showers, and much brighter weather, but turning cooler too across the north of Scotland, with highs up to 19 or 20 Celsius across the south of the UK, nearer the low to mid-teens further north. Generally turning more unsettled and cooler during the week ahead though.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. The emails are coming in thick and fast, and a surprising statement from Stephen. He says, good evening, Stephen, what a bunch of no-hopers. Get some real people on this woke panel. Not sure who you're talking about. I mean, Benjamin, obviously the wokest man in Britain, didn't think I was woke.
I'm definitely not woke.
Paul was not woke.
I've not been called woke ever.
James, you're a woke artist?
I didn't think so until this point.
I've even got a T-shirt saying just stop being woke.
Richard,
You know
if go on.
Ben, I can't stand when people call me the wokest man in Britain. I say, excuse me, don't assume my gender.
Well, there we go. He's reeled that one out about 10 times over the past 4 months, but we'll laugh again anyway. Richard, tell us, send another email back in or a comment and tell us who you mean, particularly, because I'd like to know if you mean me. Elsewhere, Richard, you say, I'm seriously getting fed up of hearing about Trump, Biden and USA politics day in, day out on all news channels. Has Britain suddenly become the 51st state of the USA? No, I get you, but there is an election this year in November. It was quite a historic moment. A former president and a running president would be being charged as a felon, so I guess it deserves the coverage. Anyway, back to the show. It's time now for our next debate. Who's up next?
So I think that's for me. So there's a company in Scotland called Baillie Gifford, an investment management firm, who are the latest victims of a bunch of climate change protesters melding into anti-Israel protesters and this kind of omni-cause, everything that's sort of anti-capitalism, anti-Western, anti-free world, pressuring arts organisations to disassociate from companies. So this Baillie Gifford company invests in all kinds of things around the world, but it also sponsors the Hay on Wye Literary Festival, the Edinburgh Book Festival, and both of these festivals have now had to pull out and say we don't want their money anymore. That's going towards lovely charitable things like helping children to learn to read, because there are concerns of some sort of violence or disobedience or anything else going on from climate protesters and anti-Israel protesters, and I think it's disgraceful.
OK. Well, look, I cannot stand Just Up Oil or Extinction Rebellion or any of that lot. But I've had many run-ins with them, lots of it on YouTube. Go and check it out. However...
I'm blocked, I think.
However, that I will fight for their rights to protest and you know, free speech. I don't care whether they're from my side of the argument. I will die for their right to make their argument, whether I think it's a load of nonsense or not. So, I mean, when it comes to art events, what are they doing? Are they literally storming art events physically? Are they making physical threats? What's going on?
So I think they're moving towards threats of that because this is the concern that these protesters, the concern that the organisers of these festivals have. But the bigger problem here is the fact that these people are complaining about perfectly legitimate, very successful British businesses investing in perfectly legitimate causes. So in this company, they actually invested huge amounts of money in electric vehicles that you would think that the greeny climate people would really like. But no, they don't actually care about the climate. They don't care about the environment. Just like the anti-Israel people don't really care about the plight of suffering of people across the Middle East. They just hate the current thing. They're anti-Israel. I think the problem is these people are anti-Semitic. And then when it comes to this point about climate, they're just anti-capitalism. And then if we start acceding to these demands of these lunatics, we're all going to end up with no power, no cars, no joy, no fun in life, and apparently no book festivals.
But you agree they do have the right to make that point?
They have the right to make the point, and we have a right to stand up to them and to help give companies and festivals the right kind of security and just the right kind of cultural confidence in this country not to fall foul of these people and not to be scared that Greta Thunberg's going to come along, make you go to the toilet in a bucket, or people are going to come along and throw baked beans over precious artworks.
Renee?
I think that you just actually made the real point of this, is that it's not about the people protesting. They can do what they want as long as they don't disrupt physically other people's lives. But I think the important thing here is that these companies are being bullied to the point where they're backing down, and we need to empower them so that they don't do that. But the problem is it often involves money, and what these companies are scared of is that people will stop buying their trainers or stop buying their books or stop buying their electric cars.
The boycotting that happens.
Yeah. So what happens is they then back off because they're worried about their bottom line. And we somehow need to move away from this absolutely divisive bullying tactic that protest now is.
Well, it's happened on this channel. But before this channel even launched, a far-left campaign group, which still runs today, was running an advertising boycott, and we're still affected by it today. It's a complete lack of free speech.
Yeah, I agree with you on most things, but I'm not all for protesting whenever you like, because France, for instance, they banned the pro-Palestine marches, I think, a couple of weeks after the tragedy that happened. So they didn't want all of these people on their streets affecting tourism, because a lot of people, obviously, especially Paris, go there for tourism. Commerce, a lot of restaurants can't serve people at lunchtime. People can't go shopping. And this is what's happening in this country. Obviously, today, we've had a different type of protest. Once in a blue moon, it was a protest for British people. So I'm happy about that. But we can't keep on having these protests. I live in the heart of central London. I can't go shopping on a weekend. I can't go to the cinema because of these protests. So at some point, I'm not all for protests whenever you like. No, I think the pro-Palestine marches should be banned now. And you're not actually allowed to protest, a big protest, unless you get the authority from the police. So the police can actually turn down the request to protest. So too many people think they have carte blanche to protest whenever they like, however many people, affect how many businesses, how many people live in areas, and enough needs to be enough. So, yeah, I don't think everyone should be able to protest whatever they
Benjamin, do you back your far-left cohorts in this case?
I don't think I've ever been far-left. Everyone in the Labour Party called me a Tory for many years, so, you know, it's nice now to be in the mainstream. Look, I think there's actually a massive hypocrisy in some people that say they're against these boycotts, they don't like it. Because when it came to, in the US, you had a situation with a transgender influencer and the company Budweiser and Bud Light. Well, suddenly all the people that would have probably agreed with you were saying, I'm not going out and buying Bud Light because I don't like that they had this person post a TikTok video.
Because that was very
I think it's
sinister,
hypocrisy.
what they did. It's sinister. It's not about...
Sinister.
No, but that's the very point, Benjamin. That's the very point, that people are so powerful now because of social media that they can actually hit a company's bottom line into the billions of pounds or dollars. So people are so scared now that there's no such thing as free speech, really, because it's being governed by this.
Is this not a really effective democratic way of executing free speech? Because it only gets into the billions in Bud Light, for example, and it really did get that big. It was a nightmare for them because hundreds of thousands of people, if not more, stopped regularly buying that product in democratic protest. Now, clearly, I disagreed with their reasons, but arguably, it's a pretty effective means of...
Well, you say that, but if GB News over the next year can't attract more advertisers because companies are stopping people from advertising them because they're too scared now to go against it, that would actually stop free speech. Do
you know what? I have a theory which I think will manifest over the next 5 to 10 years, and that corporations will finally understand that the majority of their customers are normal thinking people just trying to work hard, put food on the table for their family, and I think there'll be an epiphany where they realise that people don't care about all this PC woke stuff and box ticking, and I think we'll see the tide turn. I think I think you'll see major broadcasters like ITV maybe you know, hiring some faces today who would traditionally be considered, you know, quite controversial. I think you'll mean you. I think me. No, I don't think they touch me with a barge pole, but at the moment anyway. But you know, big corporations, I think the tide will turn. I think we're going to get over this wokery PC.
Well, a lot of left-wing stations are losing viewers, you know, so yeah. People may change.
All right, interesting debate. Still ahead, the King's official... Anyway, get this. The King's official out-of-space expert. I didn't know he had one, so he's the official royal astronomer. He says it's very likely that aliens exist. He doesn't mean Benjamin Butterworth, he means proper aliens from outer space. We're going to be asking our own favourite space expert if he's right. But next, one of the government's final acts before Parliament dissolved was to ban puberty blockers for kids. That was on the NHS. Did they get that right? And have they got the Monday ban, coming in a couple of days, for private clinics to be prohibited from dishing out puberty blockers for kids? So this is new legislation, emergency legislation, coming out in just a few days. Is that the right thing to do? You're with Saturday 5, live on GB News.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Angela, it's been a busy old time for the royals.
It has been a very busy old time. I thought I would start with Prince William. He was doing the third of the 3 garden parties that were going on, and it was pouring with rain. For the King Charles, it was beautifully sunny. This was pouring with rain, and you think it would be very sad he's not with his wife. I thought he did a brilliant job because he got all his cousins together. They all dressed up absolutely beautifully, and they were very keen to be friendly and chatting. They even were chatting round to everyone. It doesn't mean they're going to have an important place within the royal family when he takes over, but it was just very nice. And Zara, I thought, looked stunningly beautiful with a pink hat, white dress with pink buttons on. She looked absolutely lovely. And she and Beatrice looked absolutely gorgeous, and I thought that these two are very happily married and they're blossoming and they look wonderful. So it was very nice, it was very good, and it saved him from looking to be all alone.
He hides it really well, and he does his role nicely. Now, what about the awful trolling that Catherine's been receiving?
Yes, 9 million women have cancer a year. Nearly all of them carry on going to work, but she doesn't. you know, she's taking advantage of her position. Well, he doesn't know how ill she doesn't know what sort of medication she's having. I thought it was so spiteful. And actually what was worth seeing this terrible painting in Tatler that made her, you know, look nothing like her. And it was a bit like a sort of spinster headmistress.
Wouldn't that have been a nice... That picture was meant to be a nice picture of her.
It was absolutely terrible. It looked nothing like her. You know, it's not a time when you want to see a picture and think, oh, my goodness, is this what people look nice?
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. We're actually still rocking from Paula's revelation off air just then that she's never had a kebab. Very strange person.
Never had a chicken leg either. That's probably even more strange.
Right, what do you eat?
I eat chicken, I eat sushi, I eat crisp, but I don't like to eat meat on the bone.
Okay.
Unless it gets like cannibal-like.
Right.
I just don't like it.
Another message from Feldy. Good evening to you. It sounds like you're having a fun night. You say, I've seen more testosterone in an apple than the males on this panel. Elsewhere, Kate says, guys, I'm a British hotel rep in the Americas, Mexico at the moment. You should see the behaviour of the Americans and Canadians. They make the Brits look like angels. And Dean, good evening to you. You say peaceful, non-damaging, non-destructive protest that does not disrupt the lives of non-protesters is fine. If you cannot do that, then you should be arrested and charged and a non-protest order put on the group you are affiliated to. I take it you're not a Just Stop Oil fan then, Dean. Right, time now for our next debate. I think it's you, Dr. Renee.
It is me, if I keep my voice for it. So a month ago, the Cass report was released and it said that children and young people presenting to the NHS with gender distress were being let down by the NHS because the evidence base was remarkably weak that was being used to treat them. The result of this was the UK government banned puberty blockers for children that's under 18 in the NHS. I stood up as a doctor and a mother and applauded that. However, there was a massive fly in the ointment, and that was that private clinics could still prescribe puberty blockers for children, and one rather large clinic being run by a UK GP operating in Spain was sending out prescriptions to children as young as 13 by the post. There were plenty of other private clinics who were prepared to jump on this exponential rise in young children being convinced that they could have been born in the wrong body. The government actually acted last week just before Parliament was dissolved and launched emergency legislation which comes into practice on Monday, which prohibits private GPs and clinics, wherever they're based, even in the EU, from prescribing for children, and this will be in place for at least 3 months. So I think we should all stand up and applaud that safeguarding is back in the room for our children, even if it is only for 3 months and the next government may overturn it.
Benjamin?
I mean, I think safeguarding is the wrong word to use because it's not bringing in more checks for the individual children concerned, which would be the right thing to do. And there has been a problem that some kids were being diagnosed with these things when actually it wasn't the correct diagnosis. It's not a safeguard in this scenario.
Totally
it's a stop because it's banning them from being able to access these things, which isn't the same as a safeguard. That's a ban.
Totally.
And so the fact is that you have young people who know they're in the wrong body, who are in
children.
No, they
Benjamin,
know
nobody's in the wrong body.
Incredible distress.
Nobody's in the wrong body.
So you're telling me that, you know, I remember someone called April Ashley. She's now died. She was one of the first people in this country to have gender reassignment surgery in the 50s. She was a Vogue model as a woman. She made history because she married an aristocrat, and she was the basis of what would become our same-sex marriage laws. She lived as a woman from the 50s until she died about 2 or 3 years ago.
Still doesn't mean
Are you telling me that she wasn't in the wrong body? She wasn't confused when she was born?
She felt like she was.
She had severe...
She died at 80 odd. You're saying she spent 60 years pretending?
She had severe... No, of course she wasn't pretending. She had severe mental distress. She felt that she was in the wrong body. But nobody is really in the wrong body.
But how do you know
God
that?
does
Because
make
you're not
mistakes,
transgender.
though.
That's like I'm a gay person. That's like telling me that I don't really feel a sexual attraction to another man.
Well, no,
It's not what you
It's entirely different. It's entirely different. Of course it is. But that is your sexual attraction, Benjamin. It is not you saying these sexual organs that I have should not be on my body. It's a mistake. Let's cut them off.
And so why do you think so many people from so many backgrounds in so many countries for so long have realised that this is a problem they have? Do you think
some would argue it's social contagion? But let me...
It's not. That's a nasty way to talk about human beings.
Just make a
human
point?
beings are not contagious.
Can I just make this point? It's quite interesting. I was watching an American show about a trans... Well, basically, he was born a man, and then he felt he was trapped in the wrong body, and he was a female. But the reason he thought that was because when he was in his mother's belly, there were twins, and the other twin was a girl, and that girl died. So the doctor said in very rare cases, he can feel that he is a girl because the other fetus passed away.
Benjamin, by definition, gender dysphoria is a mental illness. It's not a sexual attraction.
Language that was used to describe homosexuality.
But it is a mental illness. Gender dysphoria is a mental illness. Do you not agree that gender dysphoria is a mental illness, surely?
Well, I mean, it's a medically... linguistics of how you describe the experience that those people have. But to deny that they have the experience is nonsense.
But I think the problem is, Benjamin, that once you're over 18, whatever you want to do with your outward appearance and how you live is entirely up to you. Yeah. But children cannot realise what might happen to them later in life when they're sterilised by drugs that they take. We as adults must safeguard them from making that decision.
OK, James, 10 seconds. Sorry, you cut short.
When young people think that they have, or when young people suffer from things like bulimia and anorexia, we don't say, yeah, you fat pig, that's it, go starve yourself. We don't do that, and that's, I'm afraid, been basically the equivalent. OK. That's the problem.
Right, that's the end of the first hour. Loads more to come, though, on the show tonight, including the King's own outer space advisor says aliens probably do exist. And we'll have one live with us here in the studio. Only joke, of course we know. But we'll have
it's covering what's coming on.
We'll have a space expert, indeed, and we'll answer all your questions in Ask the Five. Keep those questions coming in. First, though, let's get your weather with Marco.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We hold on to a lot of fine weather across the UK over the next day or so, but as we go into the new working week, things will turn a bit cooler and more unsettled from the north. High pressure is dominating at the moment, the high located just to the west of the UK, but it's keeping things pretty quiet weather-wise. And certainly as we head into the evening, we hold on to a lot of fine, dry weather. Cloud tending to melt away across England and Wales, so plenty of clear weather as we go into the early hours of Sunday. We'll see one or two mist or fog patches forming by Sunday morning, and notice some rain just pushing into the far northwest of the UK by the early hours of Sunday too. Towns and city temperatures hold up quite well, generally near double figures, but in some rural spots we could dip down to 2 or 3 Celsius, so we could see a touch of frost in one or two very rural spots by Sunday morning. So Sunday gets off to a pretty fine start across the east and southeast of Scotland, lots of sunshine around, but notice out towards the west and northwest, thicker cloud bringing some outbreaks of rain. And that cloud of rain will also work its way in across parts of Northern Ireland, so some patchy rain here as we start Sunday. But for England and Wales, it's set fair, plenty of sunshine around, pretty much unbroken sunshine in places, just a legacy of some low cloud to clear from the far southeast first thing in the morning. During the rest of the day on Sunday, those outbreaks of rain in the northwest will gradually start to migrate further south and east across other parts of Scotland, across Northern Ireland, eventually reaching the far northwest of England by the very end of the day. East of Scotland and down towards the southeast, and too for much of England and Wales. Lots of sunshine here, and again feeling quite warm in that sunshine, particularly towards the southeast of England. Highs here are 23, possibly even 24 Celsius. That's into the mid-70s in Fahrenheit. Always a bit cooler though towards the northwest, given that cloud and rain. The band of cloud and rain edges further south into England and Wales as we go into Monday. To the south of that, brighter skies, 1 or 2 showers, and much brighter weather, but turning cooler too across the north of Scotland, with highs up to 19 or 20 Celsius across the south of the UK, nearer the low to mid-teens further north. Generally turning more unsettled and cooler during the week ahead though.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's It's the Great British Summer Giveaway. And have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
How prevalent is it in those with darker skin, like me?
That's a great question, and it's one that we get a lot. So your skin tone does affect your risk of skin cancer. People at the most risk are people with lighter skin tones, so light-coloured hair and eyes as well, lots of moles and freckles, a history of sunburn or a family history of skin cancer. But people with darker skin tones can still burn and can still get skin cancer. Anybody can get skin cancer. So I would encourage everybody, regardless of your ethnicity or your skin tone, to think really seriously about taking care when it's sunny. That myth that you've mentioned that Black people can't get skin cancer is really prevalent, and that's something I want to dispel right now, immediately. Because more Black people think maybe they can't get skin cancer, that might mean that when they spot something unusual for them, they're less likely to go to the doctor and they're diagnosed later. And when you're diagnosed later, your outcomes do tend to be worse.
So the figures are disturbing that more people are getting skin cancer. But what about outcomes? I mean, if you do get skin cancer, what are your prospects?
So yeah, like you say, this research is a mixed picture. We're seeing incidence, so the number of new cases going up, which is not good news. But there is some good news in that mortality, so whether you're going to die or not, is actually going down. And we think that's partly due to early diagnosis, which I just mentioned is so important. But also research has led to better and kinder treatments, which mean the outcomes are likely to be better. So now, if you're diagnosed at the earliest stage, stage 1, with melanoma, actually around 9 in 10 people will survive their disease for 5 years or more.
The People's Channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Ben Leo, along with James Price, Dr. Renee Honderkamp, Paula London, and your favourite, Benjamin Butterworth. Plenty more to come tonight, including, do aliens exist? The King's Own space advisor says they do. It's 7 p.m, and this is the Saturday 5. Also still to come tonight, Dr. Renee and Paula go head-to-head in the Saturday scrap on whether we need to have more kids to save the human race. Nothing too deep. And in Bunch of 5, Liz Truss claims she's not Britain's worst ever Prime Minister. Who else could she have in mind? Give your guesses to gbnews.com/your say. Then we'll also be answering your questions in Ask the 5. Send them through to that same address, gbnews.com/your say. But first, it's your Saturday night news with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's 1 minute past 7 exactly. And let's start with a roundup of today's election news as the battle lines are being drawn in the fight for votes, with both the Conservatives and Labour launching their election battle buses today. Speaking to a crowd in front of his campaign bus, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, pledged to give millions of pounds to towns across the country if he's re-elected.
100 towns across our country, they're going to receive £20 million each.
And crucially, it will be local people in all those areas are in charge of how to spend that money to make sure it's spent and invested on their priorities. An example of us levelling up everywhere, backing local people and their priorities, and giving them the long-term funding assurance to do so. The methodology that selects these towns is something that's been used multiple times before. It's all public. It's based on areas levelling up needs, looking at economic opportunities, skills, health and life expectancy. So it's an objective set of criteria, all published online. But I'm not going to make any apology for supporting towns.
Well, Labour's battle bus is heading on a 5,000-mile journey to key seats across the country. Setting off today, the vehicle's being used by the party to highlight its Power Up agenda. Sir Keir Starmer says it's a replacement to the Conservatives' own Levelling Up pledge, which he has called a phony gimmick.
You want change, the power's with you because the vote is with you. You have to vote for change. We have changed this Labour Party and put it back in the service of working people. What we're asking now, humbly asking, is the opportunity to change our country and put it back in the service of working people. And that requires both setting out our ambition to change the country, but also the first steps, the down payment, if you like, stabilising the economy, making sure we can deal with our waiting list, getting people back into work, setting up Great British Energy to keep bills down. They are the first steps to the change this country desperately needs.
Responding to Sir Keir Starmer in Scotland, the First Minister there, John Swinney, claimed that a Labour government would devastate work opportunities and insist that the SNP can remove what he calls the remaining rump of Conservative representatives.
What's important is that the SNP goes to this election to win it, and that's what we're about. We're going into this election to win it. And the North East of Scotland, we've got a really good opportunity to contribute towards removing the Conservative government by making sure that SNP MPs, who are the SNP candidates, who are the challengers in each of the Conservative-held seats in the North East, are able to win those seats. So my message in short to voters in the North East of Scotland is to vote SNP to remove the Conservatives who've done so much damage to the communities and the people of Scotland.
John Swinney there speaking earlier this afternoon. Well, in other news, there's been a heavy police presence in central London today for several protest events. Thousands of people turned out for a rally organised by Tommy Robinson in Parliament Square, as Stand Up to Racism staged their own counter-protests nearby. These live pictures coming to us from Wembley, where the Metropolitan Police says streets there are even busier at tonight's Champions League final. But it does insist that a robust operation is in place throughout the night in case of any further disruption. Rishi Sunak has praised a proposed ceasefire deal set out by President Joe Biden, calling it welcome news. He's calling on Hamas to accept the new deal to end the conflict in Gaza. That proposal would end the fighting and return hostages, beginning with a 6-week ceasefire. But Israel's government says certain conditions still have to be met by Hamas. Boris Johnson says that a second Donald Trump presidency is now more likely following his hush money trial. The former Prime Minister's come out in support of the now convicted former president, saying the verdict won't derail Mr. Trump's campaign. Donald Trump says he will be appealing the conviction, falsifying business records, and lashed out at what he calls a scam verdict. Well, we've heard tonight that North Korea has allegedly sent more balloons filled with rubbish and suspected animal poo floating off towards the south. In Seoul, the South Korean government's dispatched chemical and explosive clearance teams to recover debris. We understand 260 or so balloons have been detected so far flying across the border. Pyongyang says it's in retaliation for defectors and activists who have sent their own inflatables across the border further north, containing leaflets, food, medicine and USB sticks, often loaded with K-pop videos. And finally, Ticketmaster has confirmed it's been hacked and that the data taken includes customers' partial payment information. Some 560 million people worldwide are reportedly affected. It's being suggested the group's called Shiny Hunter wants £400,000 or it threatens to sell those details on the dark web. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on the screen. We don't have that there for you, but you can, of course, go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Ben Leo and I can promise you, you're in for another very lively hour. Let's crack on with tonight's big interview. And this is a story which caught my eye this morning. The King's own official outer space advisor, yes, he has one, he says it's extremely likely we're not alone in the universe. Strange, odd-looking, slightly creepy creatures with a set of beliefs, values and customs completely at odds with everything the rest of us hold dear. But enough about the Labour and Tory frontbenchers. What about those aliens? Well, let's ask our unofficial out-of-space advisor, the brilliant Andy Lowndes. Good evening, Andy. Come on then, let's have it out first of all. Let's be frank. Do aliens exist? Are we alone in the universe?
It's a matter of belief, this, for scientists, because we are actually here, and extraterrestrials in some respects are ourselves because we exist in space. And the thought that with all the trillions of stars out there and the trillions of planets going around them, that life hasn't arisen anywhere else is just a ludicrous point of mathematics. So the answer is yes, there's got to be life out there somewhere. And there could even be microbe life still within our solar system on Mars or the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Intelligent life is another issue, whether or not there is intelligent beings out there, but it is likely that that has arisen somewhere else in space and is somewhere out there. And most scientists, as the Astronomer Royal pointed out to the King, most scientists actually believe that to be the case. The difficulty comes in actually finding it and identifying it. So to be a perfect hardcore scientist, until we have absolute evidence for it, the answer remains no. But we do believe that it must have arisen somewhere else in the universe.
Yeah, it's a good point about, you know, life being intelligent. I mean, there's plenty of life on planet Earth, but some would argue not very much of it is that intelligent, not least on pro-Palestine protests every Saturday. Yeah. But tell us about this, the King's out-of-space advisor. I didn't even know he had such a thing.
It's not really the King's advisor, it's the Astronomer Royal, and this was originally set up in order for an astronomical observatory, the Royal Observatory, to map the heavens, to make charts for the Royal Navy to navigate across the oceans. Now, this has evolved. This was part of the Admiralty until about 1966, and it really becomes part of the scientific establishment, where the Astronomer Royal advises the government and works with other committees, such as the Royal Astronomical Society, the Royal Society, on matters of science. And in particular, the Astronomer Royal concentrates on matters relating to astronomy and issues relating to that. So it's a role that we've had here for quite a long time. And the King, if he has called him in to ask some advice on something, which I think would be a very good idea for this particular King, who hasn't actually been very pro-space science in the past, to get some advice from the Astronomer Royal.
OK, I think, James, you've got a question for our man here.
So, as I understand it, we send, as a species, a signal out there into the cold, vast depths of space, saying, here we are, is anybody out there? Do we think that's a sensible thing, because some benign civilization out there might hear our cry and come along and bless us with wonderful new technology? Or is it like prey bleating out and saying to the arch predator, I'm out here, come and eat me? What do you think about
that? A couple of things for that. First of all, we have sent some signals out deliberately. We've done that on purpose as a scientific experiment. And we also have some information on spacecraft which fly into space. However, any possibility for intelligent species is going to be quite some distance away, and it's going to take many years for our signals to reach them. And if we're right with some of the assumptions we're taking from the observations we're making of nearby stars and the planets going around them, which do not appear to be habitable, the stars and the planets could be thousands of light years away, which means the signals will take thousands of years to reach them. And then the aliens would have to cross that immense distance. So I don't think that in its sense is an immediate threat. Also, we can't help it anyway. We're bleeding our information out anyway. We're electromagnetic species. This program itself will drift into space and will continue drifting through space for some perhaps extraterrestrials to pick it up at some point in the very far distant future.
They'd probably launch an attack, Andy, if they saw an episode of Saturday 5, they'd probably try and get rid of us. You talked about aliens not being able to travel distances, you know, many millions of light years, but that's only according to our knowledge of science and space and time. Who's to say that aliens or other species haven't cracked, you know, the time-space conundrum?
That's a good question. The issue is, of course, is the laws of physics. We can only work within the laws of physics and the laws of physics that we fully understand to this point. There's a very good, very good TV series, a variation of the War of the Worlds, where the extraterrestrials actually work within a quantum concept, that would be something quite fantastic, but would be actually probably thousands of years ahead of where we are now with trying to understand such things. And people talk about wormholes and all these sort of things come into it. But we don't actually have the physics to do that. And the amount of energy required to create things like wormholes is absolutely vast. So it would be a very, very different physics indeed that we'd be very used to actually do that. And we can't, of course, mitigate against that. You never know what extraterrestrials have. But the distances are staggering in real terms. I think it's people very rarely get to understand just what the distances are involved.
Yeah, there's some fascinating YouTube videos trying to articulate just how vast space is, and the universe is ever increasing, of course. James, another question?
Yeah, a little closer to home. I'm obviously very interested in British politics, international politics, but we'll soon be getting more kind of astral politics going on as more and more satellites end up in space, and Elon Musk talks about making us a multi-planetary species and all these things. One thing I'm particularly worried about are these, I think they're called Lagrange points, where you can stick something up into space and it sits equidistant between, say, the moon and the Earth in a perfect bit of gravity, or wider bodies as well. And if, say, the Chinese managed to stick up versions of the International Space Station at these points that could just sit there, gives them a massive advantage both out in space and closer to home. Do you think that the UK, America, anybody else is paying enough attention to these kind of politics of space in, say, 50, 100 years' time?
Very good question. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 is what we're governing at the moment with international organisations. And countries like China, for instance, do follow those regulations very closely. And it's very interesting that Russia tried to put forward a paper through the United Nations recently, the Security Council, to ban outer space weapons, which was actually interesting, rejected, which seems strange. But yes, I mean, the Lagrange point isn't that quite a serious a point, is it? We put space satellites up there to actually do the work. The Webb telescope sits on Lagrange point, for instance. But satellites could be placed in geostationary orbit, which are the more serious places to put things. And international communities are actually working together. But I think space politics and space legislation now needs to come forward because we're way out of date from what we had. One of the interesting things we've got now is the private sector involved in going to places like the moon and possibly even going to Mars. And private companies will want to get minerals, lithium, for instance, helium-3, which is an isotope of helium, which is available on the moon, not available on the Earth, which will be used for nuclear fusion reactors. So there's going to be a race out there, and it's not simply for the sake of it. There are commercial reasons for this, and possibly grabbing the old high ground. And I think there needs to be a coming together for new legislation for nations to work more cooperatively in this field. It's interesting that even with the situations going on in Ukraine, Russia and America are cooperating on the International Space Station.
All right, Andy, thank you so much. Really fascinating. One more thing I understand you've got to present us with. Oh, dear. There we are. You've answered the question. He's there with you. What's his name, Andy?
Who's that, then?
Did you not see him? It's like a pantomime. He's behind you. Good stuff. Thank you, Andy. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks very much for having me. Thanks.
My theory's always been, guys, that actually I think aliens probably walk among us. They don't probably, look like green lizards or reptilians. I think they probably take human form. But Benjamin, you're screwing your face up.
I always find it weird the way we imagine what aliens look like, because there is literally the most unfathomably bizarre creatures exist on planet Earth, right? So they're not going to look as more weird than anything that actually does exist. But I always wonder, the question is whether there is evidence of life out there and that it's withheld from us for our own benefit.
I was going to ask that question because there are people who have reported they've got small alien bodies that they found that have been confiscated by governments. I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I think they might need help.
Interesting.
Look, I'm going to be honest. I'm not a believer in, it is rational to think there could be life in the massive, universe somewhere, but I don't think that they're turning up to someone's backyard while they're sat in their Volvo in Milton Keynes, right? Why is it always that people who think they've seen alien life, it looks just like E.T. or whatever they've seen?
And they drive a Volvo.
Exactly. I mean, it's really quite implausible that they're following Spielberg in their identity.
Apparently there's a new edition or rendition of Interstellar coming out in the next couple of years, so that'll be interesting. And actually, the most fascinating part of this story is the fact that the King has some sort of official outer space pod.
And if you want to say, what beer would the aliens drink? Interstellar.
Oh, yeah, good one. Right, OK. On that note, it's officially summer, if you didn't know. It doesn't feel like it, but we've got a brand new summer giveaway, £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular, plus brand new Apple iPods, rather, and an iPhone, and £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. So if you like theme parks, visiting stately homes, or a fancy spa day out, I know Benjamin does, it could be on us. Here's all the details you need to win.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Great prize, very good luck to you. Still to come tonight in Bunch of Five, we'll be asking if LBC's presenter, or former presenter now, Ian Dale, was right to quit as a parliamentary candidate for the Tories. I don't know if you saw this, but there was an old clip unearthed about comments he made about the seats that he was standing in Tunbridge Wells. Basically said that he didn't want to live there because it was a bit of a dump. And elsewhere, has Ed Davey been the star of the general election campaign so far? But next, it's almost time for the Saturday Scrap. Dr. Renee and Paula London are about to squabble about whether we need to up our game when it comes to having more kids. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
How does it work in your home then when you're discussing politics, especially with your young son, Nigel?
Well, I mean, we discuss politics rather than argue about it. Both of us are political professionals. We've been in the game a long time, so we understand that. So we're more keen on what is actually going on and how things are working out than clashing over opinions. Now, Claire is a Tory Brexiteer. I'm a Labour Remainer.
Do you think relationships like your own are going to become less and less common?
I think they are, and I think we can see that politics has become very divided, it's become very toxic, and we've lost that art of debating. I'm more than happy to speak to anybody on any subject to do with politics, because I think it's only healthy to listen to someone's opinion. You may not agree with it, you may think that they're ridiculous. However, I think it's really important that you hear those views, because if you only become encased in a bubble of your own opinion, you're never going to learn anything. And I think politics needs that. You need to be able to explore other sides of an argument. It also makes you better at arguing.
Yeah.
And Nigel and I constantly disagree on various bits and pieces, but you learn how to place your argument so much better because you know what the other side are thinking. Now, if we had that across the country and across the House of Commons, we could have so much better debate and so many better different opinions coming through, and it would be a lot healthier.
And polite debate, which always strikes me about you two. You disagree on most things when it comes to politics, but you do so with so much humour and so much respect for one another.
Well, we find politics fun, and so when we bring politics into the home, we want to have fun with it too.
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, he's no angel, but following a hit job court case, Donald Trump's enemies have just gifted him the keys to the White House. In My Take at 10, Britain's wokest man, Gary Lineker, strikes again. Now he doesn't like the weapons companies who keep the free world safe. Plus, the Hamiltons and TV legend, the Green Goddess herself, Diana Moran. We're live at 9.
Hello, welcome back to the Saturday 5. Emails and messages coming in on the chances of there being alien life in the universe. Peter says, aliens? Of course there will be, but we have no idea how big the universe is or what's in it. We don't even know if it is in fact infinite. No idea of how many trillions of galaxies there are. Do you seriously think Earth is the only place life took hold? Interesting. Lisa says, if there are any aliens out there, they are clearly intelligent because they've seen us and don't want to know. Good point. And English Dragon says, that Butterworth character looks and acts totally alien to me. That Butterworth character. What do you make of that, Benjamin?
I'm trying to think of a witty retort, but I'm all used on the interstellar joke.
There we go. OK, we'll move on swiftly. It's time for this. All right, ding, ding, ding. This is tonight's main event. Should we be encouraging Brits to have more children? Pronatalists, those who believe our future depends on us producing more kids, have warned today that the country won't grow and will face severe labour shortages unless more children are born. It comes, of course, as the ONS statistics show that the UK birth rate fell to a very lowly 1.49 children per woman in 2022. That's the lowest since records began in 1939. So, should we all get reproducing to save the nation, or are there alternative methods we need to employ? Well, let's see what Dr. Renee and Paula London think about this. Seconds out, it's round one.
Shall I kick off? Yes. Because I absolutely believe that the pronatalists are right and we should be encouraging women to have more children. Not just from the point of view that having a child, as I've done twice, is one of the best things that a woman can ever do. It's the meaning of life. It's the reason that we're here. And if a woman can do it, she generally feels richer after it. However, having said that, it's expensive to have children. So we need, as a country, as a government, to encourage women to have children, to be mothers, to stay at home if they want to. If they want to go to work, that's fine as well. But we need to actually provide both childcare for workplace, and we also need to give women an incentive to stay at home. Let's pay them to do what nature intended us to do, to be mothers, to enjoy it and to relish it. And that way we prepare ourselves for the future. We have a workforce that can actually provide our pensions because we have an ageing population, and there is no pots when you're elderly. The money comes from what we're earning and paying tax today. So yes, we need women to have more children, otherwise we won't exist in 100 years' time.
OK, well, firstly, you're making a big assumption that everyone that has children, these children go on to work, because some of them don't go on to work. All they do is cost the taxpayer a lot of money. We do have the lowest birth rate in decades and decades, but what we do have, interestingly enough, is the highest birth rate of people having children that were not born in the UK. So some people are coming over to this country. Some of them, I'm going to be honest, don't have any intention of working, and they're having plenty of children. And if your parents don't work, often the children don't work. So we're not really going to help the workforce. All we're going to do is bankrupt the country if, like, hundreds of thousands of people decide to have children when they have no intention of working. Also, not all women want to have children. Women, I wasn't put on this earth to have children. If I would have found the right guy, maybe I would have had a child. I could still have a child, but haven't met the right guy, and I don't feel the need. Not all women want to have children. And another very big point is not all women should have children. A lot of women have children and they're terrible mothers. So, no, we don't just encourage people just because you have a uterus, that's it. You need to have a child. That's what you're put on this earth to do. And also, I do worry that a lot of people do want to have children, especially British families, but they feel like they can't afford. Because many years ago, you could easily have a father going to work, doing a very normal job, and you could buy a house. Now, that's impossible. And a lot of mums and dads or two mothers feel it's unfair to have children if you don't have a home, if you don't own a home, because it's scary. So I do believe that two people in committed relationships, especially if they're married, if one of them is working, the government should help them if they want to have a child, so they can bring a child into the country, of course, yeah.
So, you know, everything you raise is valid, but all of these things need to be fixed. You know, as a society that cares about...
You can't fix if someone doesn't want a child. You can't force them. Why should
I didn't say you should force a woman to have a child. What I said was all of the points you raise can be fixed. So we can educate people on how to be better parents, and we should be doing that anyway.
No, some people don't have it in them.
Well, you don't know that.
I do know that. My mother didn't actually want me, if you really want to go there. My mother wanted a boy. She wasn't a very good mother to me, so I know
we can educate parents to be better children, to raise their children properly. We need to do that anyway, because people need help. We can actually help people get on the housing ladder. We can actually decide to make work pay so that people can actually do the jobs that they need to supply their family with what they need so that they can actually grow. You know, all women were put on earth to have children. That's why they have a uterus. Whether they choose not to or to do so is a choice. But actually the facility to do so is there. It's in all of us. So all of these things are fixable. And actually, if we incentivise women to actually, maybe instead of having just childcare on offer, we actually paid women to have their next child and stay at home, many more would choose to do it. If we don't...
No, it's so wrong. You don't just pay people to have a child.
At the moment,
they don't want them. People do it for money.
Korea, for example, no longer produces enough babies to actually replace itself. Korea will be finished, South Korea actually. South Korea will be finished because they can't actually produce enough children to replace those who are dying. We are rapidly going that way. We need to replace the people that are dying.
We're obviously not rapidly going that way because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we've got the highest birth rate we've ever had, people having children.
We don't.
We're not born in this country.
I'm going to interject here. I'm going to be the referee and come in the middle here. Paula, we have the lowest birth rate in decades.
Listen, I said we've got the lowest birth rate we've had in decades, but the highest birth rate of people having children that were not born in the UK. And we've got a huge immigration problem. So it's not going to be that low if people keep coming over to this country.
Right, so why wouldn't you want to protect the integrity of the indigenous population by incentivising Brits?
I would like to incentivise, but you're saying
to
a woman's put this earth to have a baby, let's give them a few quid to have a baby. That's
why not?
Wrong. Because some women don't want children. You're forcing them, they'll be bad mothers.
No, I didn't say force anyone.
Well, you're saying
incentivise.
You can fix it. Not every woman should be a mother. I feel very strongly on that.
So you have addressed the real issue of, uncontrolled mass migration, and at the same time, Brits aren't having kids. So what's the solution?
The solution is, as I've already set everything out, if you have, I don't think, if there's a mum and a dad, never worked in their whole life, right, we want to have kids, we've only got 2, we want to have 10, give me some money so I can sit on my backside all day, those people shouldn't have more
kids. What's the solution then?
OK, if one person is working, either a mother or a father, or one of the guys, if they're a gay relation, or whatever, if there's 2 lesbians, if one person is working... Well, listen, I'm just trying... I don't want to offend anyone.
Come on, spit it out.
Listen, if one person is working, then the government can help incentivise them, give them some money. But at least one needs to work.
Not
only that, because I want the children to grow up with a mum or dad that works, so that will incentivise them to work. If people keep on having children when the mum and dad are sitting on their backside on benefits all day, they're going to produce more kids that are not going to work.
James, what do you reckon about Elon Musk? He said that the plummeting birth rate around the world, not just in the UK, but Italy, Japan, elsewhere, Asia, is a bigger existential threat to humanity than climate change.
He's 100% right. So in Britain, we're not having as many children as we say that we want. So it's not about forcing people, but most people in Britain say they want to have many more children than they're having. Now, part of that is a housing crisis, part of it is money and all these sorts of things, but it's also a cultural problem around the rest of the world. With the exception of a few countries in sub-Saharan Africa, it's mostly Nigeria, we now have negative birth rates in every other country. That's the case in China, when they're really suffering the results of the one-child policy, and they're now completely reversed that. And in some bits of India, which we think of as, now it has the highest population in the world, it has a lower birth reproduction rate than the UK does. So we say right now we're an ageing population, and the state pension, as the Adam Smith Institute has worked out, is probably going to go insolvent in about 11 years' time. We can't just fix this by importing many more people, because they themselves get older and then not also being replaced in other countries.
And you know what?
So it's an international problem.
There's many reasons why people don't have kids. I get it. You can't afford houses, you haven't got a safe roof over your head, etc., etc., etc. However, it does also coincide with the fact that younger generations, more than any before, are having the least amount of sex ever. People just aren't going out and meeting partners and, having a fun time with them. And, more importantly, getting into strong, stable relationships.
Well, my sister has done her bit for the British population because she has 9 children.
Oh, wow.
Which is quite extraordinary. I said even Snow White only had 7 dwarves. You've really gone over...
You've got to have one then. Have you got any thoughts or plans to have one?
My sister always wanted to be a midwife. And I said, you're meant to deliver other women's babies, not just so many of your own. But I do think... Look, I think immigration is part of the answer to this. We simply have a demographic problem that we have the biggest proportion
it's just not, though, because this is happening around the whole world. This is happening in all these other countries as well. As these people themselves get older themselves, and as their parents back in these countries get older, they will find themselves moving back to these places, with the exception of sub-Saharan Africa, which is behind a lot of other development curves, and we may see that gets tailed off as well. This is a worldwide problem. This is happening in every developed country, and as soon as countries develop a little bit, their birth rates plummet as well. It's not even about policy. There's a worldwide cultural issue.
Immigration is the answer to us for this in this country at the moment, because I find it hard to believe that if you get to 80 years old that you would turn down your pension because it was funded by workers who they themselves or their parents moved to this country.
All right.
As long as they're working, but some people are coming in here and not working.
And I would just point out, to fact check what you said, the percentage of non-British born people in this country who work is higher than British born. So the number of immigrants...
I never said that.
The number of immigrants in work is higher than the number of Brits.
OK, you misheard what I said.
We should be glad.
No.
People don't tend to come here to not work. They come here to work.
No, that's where you're wrong, because asylum seekers you are wrong, because only 50% of asylum seekers work once they get the leave to remain. So
78% of people born here work.
52% of asylum seekers, so they're not all coming here.
There are lies, damn lies, and statistics on these things. But you've got a point where if you have hundreds of thousands of low-skilled people coming into the country, and there's no checks and balance on that, but there is an awful lot of costs on developing new robotics and new ways to increase productivity, then of course people will just have lots of cheap labour coming in. But that brings its own social problems as well, housing problems.
OK. Fascinating debate. I'm going to go and get Benjamin and Paula some boxing gloves so they can
I win. I used to be a boxer, actually.
Oh, there we go. She's done everything. But still ahead, we answer some questions.
Oh, my God.
From our wonderful viewers in Ask the Five. But next in Bunch of Five, Liz Truss. Remember her? She says she's not our worst ever Prime Minister. But who else could she have in mind? And has this guy been the runaway star of the general election campaign so far? Sir Ed Davey, if you can't see for radio listeners, there he is on a paddleboard, falling off on a bike, looking very unagile and unimpressive. But anyway, look, you're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News. We're back in a tick.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We hold on to a lot of fine weather across the UK over the next day or so, but as we go into the new working week, things will turn a bit cooler and more unsettled from the north. High pressure is dominating at the moment, the high located just to the west of the UK, but that's keeping things pretty quiet weather-wise. And certainly as we head into the evening, we hold on to a lot of fine, dry weather. Cloud tending to melt away across England and Wales, so plenty of clear weather as we go into the early hours of Sunday. We'll see 1 or 2 mist or fog patches forming by Sunday morning, and notice some rain just pushing into the far northwest of the UK by the early hours of Sunday too. Towns and city temperatures hold up quite well, generally near double figures, but in some rural spots we could dip down to 2 or 3 Celsius, so we could see a touch of frost in 1 or 2 very rural spots by Sunday morning. So Sunday gets off to a pretty fine start across the east and southeast of Scotland, lots of sunshine around, but notice out towards the west and northwest, thicker cloud bringing some outbreaks of rain. And that cloud of rain will also work its way in across parts of Northern Ireland, so some patchy rain here as we start Sunday. But for England and Wales, it's set fair, plenty of sunshine around, pretty much unbroken sunshine in places, just a legacy of some low cloud to clear from the far southeast first thing in the morning. During the rest of the day on Sunday, those outbreaks of rain in the northwest will gradually start to migrate further south and east across other parts of Scotland, across Northern Ireland, eventually reaching the far northwest of England by the very end of the day. East of Scotland and down towards the southeast, and 2 for much of England and Wales. Lots of sunshine here, and again, feeling quite warm in that sunshine, particularly towards the southeast of England. Highs here are 23, possibly even 24 Celsius. That's into the mid-70s in Fahrenheit. Always a bit cooler, though, towards the northwest, given that cloud and rain. The band of cloud and rain edges further south into England and Wales as we go into Monday. To the south of that, brighter skies, 1 or 2 showers, and much brighter weather, but turning cooler too across the north of Scotland, with highs up to 19 or 20 Celsius across the south of the UK, nearer the low to mid-teens further north. Generally turning more unsettled and cooler during the week ahead, though.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Benjamin's just been given a black eye by Paula London off air. There we go. You can't quite see it, the glasses are covering it, but she gave him a good old chin. Anyway, welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thanks for your emails about tonight's topics. Dave says, we have more working age population now than 14 years ago. What's the problem? Loads of tripe about having more children. I don't think it's tripe.
There's a load of old people.
Where are they going to live, all these children, as well?
Benjamin, behave. Go 1 week without attacking old people, please.
Extra rooms.
Susan, you say there are far too many humans on this planet already. Nobody mentions the wildlife who lose their habitat because of all the house building that's taking place. We're not the only species on the planet. OK, kumbaya. But Margaret says... only joking. Margaret says, Paula's talking about worst-case possibilities. Working people can sort themselves out. The doctor, Renee, is right. We absolutely do need more
Why do you want more
children.
children if the parents aren't working? I don't get that.
Well, it's either that, Paula, I guess, or humanity is going to be wiped off the face of the earth.
It's not going to wipe out, is it?
OK.
We'll need the aliens at that point, won't we?
It's time now for this.
So I'll kick off here. Liz Truss has said in an interview with her local newspaper that she's not the worst Prime Minister we've ever had. And she says instead it's Tony Blair for passing all kinds of horrible legislation, and I think Gordon Brown for following up things like the Equality Act, all kinds of stuff as well. I would say my worst ever Prime Minister, Clement Attlee. Everyone thinks he's very excellent, but his was the Town and Country Planning Act that's built the kind of housing crisis we've got today and set the welfare state into such an unsustainable way. I could be exciting and pick a 19th century leader like Pitt for the best, but I'm going to go with Margaret Thatcher.
Benjamin, you would scoff at Liz Truss's claim that Blair was worse than her, but do you know what? Many people would agree his legacy, the number one being uncontrolled mass migration, he was the one who opened the floodgates to the problems we see today. She's got a point, hasn't she, our Liz?
I mean, she's not worth scoffing at. You know, most people can barely remember who Liz Truss is. The very fact that she has to answer the question of whether she's the worst Prime Minister probably tells you all you need to know about her reputation. I mean, you know, Liz Truss wasn't just the worst Prime Minister, which is what most Tory MPs clearly thought, let alone swing voters, so they're about to tell you what they think. But also, you know, she's the worst post-Prime Minister. The lack of dignity, the lack of respect for the office, that she goes around the world making, you know, silly and insulting comments about Britain. She's pathetic.
What, because she doesn't toe the line of the you know, elite political metropolitan establishment? She's brave enough to stick her head above the parapet.
And voters are about to get their say on whether they like the Liz Truss project and what's happened under the last 5 years.
It was very democratic the way they got rid of her, though, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, it was, because we have a parliamentary democracy.
Well, many people thought she was stitched up. She was voted in by the members, and then the members put her issue in.
She was the least popular Tory leader ever elected. She was the only one that got below 60%, I think it was.
Well, she got through do the
All right.
rounds.
Renee, what's your topic?
So this week, the politicians have been out talking to the country about their plan for the country on their election buses. They've been from every corner of the country to explain in words what they're going to do, apart from Ed Davey, who has decided that, you know, words are cheap, and he preferred to hop on a paddleboard, sit on a bike and fly down a hill with his legs out wide.
He's taken a lot of stick for this, but he's just having fun, isn't he? He's showing some character. Rishi Sunak, Sir Keir Starmer, they get accused of being robots on, you know, droids, but isn't Ed Davey just having a laugh?
Well, maybe he's found what the British public really want, or is politics now completely lacking dignity?
I just think he's so cringy. Looking at the things he's been doing, I can't even watch him. I mean, I would never forgive him because of the post office scandal anyway, so anything he does, I'm just not happy.
OK.
I think he's a laughing stock.
No one knew who Ed Davey was a few weeks ago. The only chance they'd heard of him was that post office scandal, and that's not very helpful. So if it gets him in the news and it reminds people the Lib Dems exist, then it's probably...
Well, they have no manifesto, because all they can do is jump on a paddle.
I once chased him down outside Parliament and asked him if women can have penises. He said yes, of course. So
oh, my God.
Make of that what you will. Right, my turn now. I don't know if you saw this earlier today, but dating site Ashley Madison, it's not just a dating site, it's an illicit affair website for married people who want to have affairs. But they've revealed the professionals who are most likely to cheat on their partners. Any guesses, very quickly?
See, I would have said surgeons, even though I've got one at home.
I said members of Parliament.
MPs,
Yeah,
OK.
probably MPs.
Well, the answer for the females or women most likely to cheat are medical assistants and nurses. And in the male list, it's IT or tech workers. Also tradies, sparkies, carpenters, they were top of the male list as well.
I've had people try it on with me, like builders that come round, and I'm like, no, I'm not interested. And I was like, do you always ask women? They go, yeah. Most of them say, yeah, even the married ones. That's what the guys told me. I can't believe it.
Also, by the way, near the top of the female list was housewives or single parents who stay at home. So, you know, lonely housewives stereotype coming into play there.
Wasn't the tragedy with this site that it said, oh, you're going to be able to find someone to have an affair with, and it turned out there were 21 million men on there and about 14,000 women?
Yeah. Busy women.
Is it ever OK to have an affair?
I did my degree at the LSE, which turned out to be the #1 university on a sugar daddy website. So, you know, which is interesting because it's also a lot of very bright young women, I suspect, for the main purpose. So, you know, the idea that it might be a surgeon or an MP, you know, just because they've got a good job doesn't mean they've got good self-control.
I know a guy that used to use Ashley Madison, but he was actually single, but he used to pretend he was married for some reason. And he married.
Do women?
So he
do women like the allure of a married man?
Yeah.
I wouldn't date a married man.
OK.
That's good of you.
Very noble.
Well, I mean, loads of women do, don't they? I mean, I wouldn't.
All right, Paula, what's your topic?
My topic is in Dow. I was very surprised. He stood down. He wanted to be a Conservative MP. He's always wanted to be an MP all of his life. He's obviously a radio presenter now. He tried to become an MP in 2005, didn't make it. So he stood up for Tunbridge Wells, and then some footage resurfaced that he said 2 years ago, saying that he would leave Tunbridge Wells if he could, and he actually lives in the vicinity. So rather than be a man, be strong and stand, he decided to quit. OK,
well, let's listen to that footage. This is Ian Dale, formerly the LBC presenter. I assume he'll probably go back to his job now that he's not standing, but this is the footage that got him in a little bit of hot water.
In that my partner comes from Tunbridge Wells and can't really imagine living anywhere else. I've never liked the place, still don't, and would happily live somewhere else.
Should that disqualify him? I know he wasn't officially booted out, but I do wonder whether the Conservatives said, Ian, you know, I think maybe step back because it's probably not going to work out.
He also said he was worried about other things he may have said that will be resurfaced as well.
Benjamin?
Yeah, but do you know what? I reckon if every MP were honest, then there'd be a lot more than just Ian Dale that wasn't putting themselves forward because they don't like the area. Most of them, some of them, have never been to the area before they're selected.
Should he not have just stood up and said, yeah, I did say that, but as an MP, I'm going to make it better?
Yeah.
You're going to get an awful lot more abuse, much, much worse than that.
Exactly.
Doors being slammed in your face through to everything else. And wonderfully, actually, the Conservatives just elected an amazing candidate for Tunbridge Wells this evening. I'm sure he's going to go.
I think Ian Dale would have been a decent Conservative candidate. I mean, definitely compared to some of the you know, the previous wets we've seen in recent years.
Turns out they only need 66 candidates, so it won't matter.
Benjamin?
Mine is about an employment tribunal this week that found that mispronouncing somebody's name can count as unwanted conduct. So a man, and I was going to say his name, but then I got really nervous that I'd pronounce his name wrong, so I'm not going to say it. But he's been awarded £9,000 because this kept happening in the workplace. Now, Renee, you've got an unusual name.
I was going to say, when you go through life being called Renee Hunderkamp, you just expect people to pronounce your name wrongly. I once worked with Robert Maxwell on a launch of the London Daily News, and we sat on the first day waiting for phone calls. Somebody answered the first phone call and called across the office, "I've got a call here for Ronnie Hunderkamp." Oh, my God. I'm used to it. It's normal. It's fine.
Renee, did anyone at school ever call you, for example, like Rennie Softchew or anything like that?
They used to call me Grenade.
OK.
Why?
Well, they said I was quite fiery, and Renee rhymed with grenade, so they used to call me Grenade. I've been called Chicken Farm because a Hunde in Dutch is a chicken.
I mean, Paulie, you changed your surname that you go by because you don't like it. Do you think these are sensitive topics?
Well, I used to work in PR, and I just think from a branding point of view, I'm very patriotic. I live in London, and my last name, I'm not going to tell everyone, but it's quite difficult to say. So, and my name has a...
Were you mocked for it or anything like that?
No, I wasn't mocked for it. I was mocked for my hair colour at school. I'm naturally a redhead. So my last name's
Oh, you're
Irish.
ginger?
Yes.
Ah.
Benjamin, you make a point there
I'm a
that
ginger.
you were worried about saying the name wrong, and so you stopped doing it. And this is what always happens, that you get people now in the workplace who are very, very nervous about doing anything wrong, so they go down formal channels immediately, and then that sets everybody off and sets more tensions and all the problem.
Yeah. I'm awful with names, and people do it to me. They say hello, they call me Leo in emails, Leo Ben. It's Ben Leo. Get it right.
That's a lovely name. It's very catchy.
And I'm called Benjamin Butterworth, which sounds like something straight out of a Dickens novel. So.
It does.
OK.
Quite nice.
Still ahead is the part of the show where you take charge as we answer all of your questions in Ask the Five. Nothing is off limits. Get those questions in now. gbnews.com/your say. That's next. You're with the Saturday Five, live on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is about the Biden administration kind of resisting calls from Harry's lawyers whether or not this ongoing thing about releasing his visa records over the alleged, in Spare, he admitted to taking, remember his memoir Spare? He admitted to taking cocaine, marijuana and magic mushrooms. And a lot of people are saying, was he honest and truthful in his application, in his visa application? You have to say, have you taken drugs? He said no, and then in Spare he said yes. So I think this is absolutely fascinating. They're saying they can't release these records because there is a stigma attached to law enforcement records. Yes, there's a stigma attached to that, but then don't say... everybody else, if you write yes on a visa application, you will be chucked out of the United States. You will be denied entry. So I think this is fascinating that on this issue of whether there is a stigma for Harry or not, he can have his law enforcement records not released into the public domain.
The bottom line is, do we want him back?
So what's interesting is it seems to be becoming a political dividing line in the States because Biden is the administration trying to do Harry a favour by keeping them under wraps, but Trump has promised that he will, the file will be made public if he wins again.
Trump's been very strong on this. He said, if Harry lied, then he's out.
The one thing about America is their politicians make ours look sane. Which is saying something.
I'm slightly confused about this whole story because, OK, sure, Prince Harry has said this. How many pop stars, rock stars, movie stars, like every
the difference is, well, I don't think it's just a British. I think millions of Brits, to be fair to them, lie on the form every year. Millions of people from around the world lie on the form every year. Not, of course,
I'm not going to name any pop star specifically, but I would be mightily surprised if any hadn't indulged in what...
Yes, but of course they haven't given written evidence in their biography that they have, and that's the difference.
Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. No emails from you fantastic viewers here because it's time for this. quite clearly a few tech gremlins in the system because we've got Leo Kearse's Saturday Night Showdown graphics in the background. That's coming up, cracking show. But let's see what you got for us this week on the Saturday 5. David says, an assistant in our local library in Bideford, looks just like Benjamin Butterworth's twin brother. Each week as I return my books, I wonder if I should tell him about this, but can't decide if he would be flattered or mortified to learn, or if he'd just call security to kick me out, knowing I watch GB News. What do you think, Benjamin?
Well, I can't believe there's someone so handsome in Bideford. Do you know, there is another person with the name Benjamin Butterworth who's an academic, and I often feel sorry for him because he gets so many tweets of people saying they can't bear me. So this poor guy in Edinburgh. But
You're
yeah,
not
you should
secretly working in a library in Bideford in the week.
your side hustle to top up your GB News salary.
Exactly, yeah. I think that maybe is what it is. But no, I mean, I used to get bullied for looking like Harry Potter, but you know, I don't know if I've outgrown that. I think I've outgrown that in weight-wise.
OK, right. Angela writes in, she says, I'm so fed up with this useless British weather. I'm booking a holiday tomorrow. I fancy somewhere new. Do you guys have any recommendations? I've just got back off holiday. I went to Corfu, very nice, not too hot. Greece is lovely in spring. It was about 25, 26 degrees. So it depends how far you want to travel, I suppose. Anyone else?
So I've just come back from the south of Spain, in between Marbella and Malaga. That's very nice as well.
Soto Grande's lovely in that area.
Summer has arrived there.
And we've learned, of course, that if you want to take your inflatable penis, then you can't take it to anywhere in Spain. But go to the United States of America. Go and be there with our special relationship cousins.
And I mentioned it earlier, but I love going to dangerous countries. So
go to Syria.
I'm that's on the cards, and I'm hoping to go to North Korea.
He's not joking.
That's my dream.
He was telling me earlier he's planning on going to Syria and Afghanistan. And of course, if viewers don't know, Benjamin, was it a few weeks ago? You got back from Yemen?
I checked across Yemen. I lost some weight, so I don't know if your librarian looks as slim as I do now. And then I went to Lebanon, to Beirut and to Tripoli.
Benjamin, this is a serious question. Did you feel over there in Yemen particularly that you had to hide your sexuality? If you don't mind me asking.
You've just outed me. But, do you know what? I don't.
No, serious question.
These countries literally kill gay people, right? But I don't think that should be a reason to stop me experiencing the world. But also, the truth is, countries that are that anti-gay, they don't even recognise that gay people exist. So the kind of traits that you'd see, you know, if you bumped into someone in a coffee shop, you'd think, oh, are they gay? It's just not even on the radar of people in countries like Yemen.
Well, you're very brave. I love your sense of adventure. Another email. This is from Michael. He says, I love Robert De Niro's films, but my friend says she hasn't seen any of them other than Shark Tale. Which ones would you recommend she starts with? I don't think I've seen any. Is Meet the Fockers one of them?
Oh, God.
Is that Robert De Niro?
Yeah, it is, yeah. No, you want to watch Taxi Driver, you want to watch Raging Bull, you want to watch Cape Fear. Don't watch Bad Grandpa. Don't watch anything that he's now doing just to get the paychecks in his old age. Don't do that. But
just all the original gangster films, Goodfellas, all of
Goodfellas,
those. Yeah. Raging Bull, was he up there?
I've never seen any of these, but I mean, some people...
Come on.
Never.
Maybe it's just our age.
I don't watch films, I just watch the news. But the reason some people...
He's on the news this week.
Which is why
Benjamin,
I know...
you said you wanted a relationship. You're not selling us
The reason some people are angry is because he was protesting against Donald Trump and got into a bit of a...
We've got 30
seconds. He wore really crazy heels on his shoes.
OK, 30 seconds left. Tessa says, my new chap is coming around for dinner tomorrow. He made me some awesome pasta the other night. I haven't got a clue how to top it. What should she make for
dinner?
Do a
nice steak. It's got to be a nice
is always good. Men love steak.
Magret de canard. Stick it in orange juice and a bunch of other things, let it marinate, and that'll be amazing.
Benjamin, some soy, I reckon?
I would take the advice of the editor of Vogue, who says that she never has garlic at events because no one likes garlic breath. So I'd just start with that rule.
It's OK if you both have it.
I used to love steak, but I've really gone off red meat for some reason. I'm not sure why. But anyway, that's it for tonight. Thanks to our guests, James, Renee, Paula and, of course, Benjamin. Darren's back next week. Next up, though, it's the brilliant Leo Kearse with the Saturday Night Showdown. Thanks again for watching. See you again next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We hold on to a lot of fine weather across the UK over the next day or so, but as we go into the new working week, things will turn a bit cooler and more unsettled from the north. High pressure is dominating at the moment, the high located just to the west of the UK, but it's keeping things pretty quiet weather-wise. And certainly as we head into the evening, we hold on to a lot of fine, dry weather. Cloud tending to melt away across England and Wales, so plenty of clear weather as we go into the early hours of Sunday. We'll see one or two mist or fog patches forming by Sunday morning, and notice some rain just pushing into the far northwest of the UK by the early hours of Sunday too. Towns and city temperatures hold up quite well, generally near double figures, but in some rural spots we could dip down to 2 or 3 Celsius, so we could see a touch of frost in one or two very rural spots by Sunday morning. So Sunday gets off to a pretty fine start across the east and southeast of Scotland, lots of sunshine around, but notice out towards the west and northwest, thicker cloud bringing some outbreaks of rain. And that cloud of rain will also work its way in across parts of Northern Ireland, so some patchy rain here as we start Sunday. But for England and Wales, it's set fair, plenty of sunshine around, pretty much unbroken sunshine in places, just a legacy of some low cloud to clear from the far southeast first thing in the morning. During the rest of the day on Sunday, those outbreaks of rain in the northwest will gradually start to migrate further south and east across other parts of Scotland, across Northern Ireland, eventually reaching the far northwest of England by the very end of the day. East of Scotland and down towards the southeast, and too for much of England and Wales. Lots of sunshine here, and again feeling quite warm in that sunshine, particularly towards the southeast of England. Highs here are 23, possibly even 24 Celsius. That's into the mid-70s in Fahrenheit. Always a bit cooler though towards the northwest given that cloud and rain. The band of cloud and rain edges further south into England and Wales as we go into Monday. To the south of that, brighter skies, 1 or 2 showers, and much brighter weather, but turning cooler too across the north of Scotland, with highs up to 19 or 20 Celsius across the south of the UK, nearer the low to mid-teens further north. Generally turning more unsettled and cooler during the week ahead though.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting.
I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there. Coming up with the Saturday Night Showdown, Trump is found guilty, but were the charges trumped up? And is it actually helping him? He paid Stormy Daniels a lot less hush money than Bill Clinton paid his hush money. Maybe taxpayers think Trump will be better with their money too. And a chaotic stabbing in Germany raises questions about Europe's ability to keep its citizens safe.